ॐ वक्रतुण्डमहाकाय सूर्यकोटिसमप्रभ निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा। सरस्वती नमस्तुभ्यं वरदे कामरूपिणी विद्यारम्भं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा। गुरवे सर्वलोकानां भिषजे भवरोगिणां निधये सर्वविद्यानां दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। साक्षात्कृतं दयानन्दं परमार्थस्वरूपिणं तत्त्वज्ञानप्रशास्तारं प्रणतोऽस्मि परं पदम्। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। 39th class. You can repeat after me. Vasudevendra Yogindram Natva Jnanapradam Gurum.
Vasudevendra Yogindram Natva Jnanapradam Gurum.
Shunam Hitarthaya Tattvabodho Vidiyate.
Mukshunam Hitarthaya Tattvabodho Vidiyate.
Sadhana Chatushtaya Sampannadikarinam.
Sadhana Chatushtaya Sampannadikarinam.
Moksha Sadhana Bhutam.
Moksha Sadhana Bhutam.
Tattva Viveka Prakaram.
Tattva Viveka Prakaram.
Vakshyamaha.
Vakshyamaha.
Sadhana Chatushtayam Kim.
Sadhana Chatushtayam Kim.
Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivekaha.
Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivekaha.
Iha Mutrartha Palabhoga Viragaha.
Iha Mudrata Palabhoga Viragaha.
Shamadhi Shatka Sampattihi.
Shamadhi Shatka Sampattihi.
Mumukshutvam Cheti.
Mumukshutvam Cheti.
Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivekaha Kaha.
Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivekaha Kaha.
Nitya Vastu Ekam Brahma.
Nitya Vastu Ekam Brahma.
Tadvyatiriktam Sarvam Anityam.
Tattiritam Sarvam Anityam.
Ayam eva Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivekaha.
Ayam नित्यानित्यवस्तु विवेकः
विरागः कः
विरागः कः
इह स्वर्गभोगेषु इच्छाराहित्यम्
इह स्वर्गभोगेषु इच्छाराहित्यम्
शमादिषट्कसम्पत्तिः का
शमादिषट्कसम्पत्तिः का
शमः दमः उपरमः तितिक्षा श्रद्धा समाधानं च इति
शमः दमः उपरमः तितिक्षा श्रद्धा समाधानं च इति
Is my voice clear to all of you?
Yes, Guruji.
शमः कः
शमः कः
मनोनिग्रहः
मनोनिग्रहः
दमः कः
दमः कः
चक्षुरादीन्द्रियनिग्रहः
चक्षुरादीन्द्रियनिग्रहः
उपरमः कः
उपरमः कः
स्वधर्मानुष्ठानम् एव
स्वधर्मानुष्ठानम् एव
तितिक्षा का
तितिक्षा का
शीतोष्णसुखदुःखादिसहिष्णुत्वम्
शीतोष्णसुखदुःखादिसहिष्णुत्वम्
श्रद्धा कीदृशी
श्रद्धा कीदृशी
गुरुवेदान्तवाक्येषु विश्वासः श्रद्धा
गुरुवेदान्तवाक्येषु विश्वासः श्रद्धा
समाधानं किम्
समाधानं किम्
चित्तैकाग्रता
चित्तैकाग्रता
मुमुक्षुत्वं किम्
मुमुक्षुत्वं किम्
मोक्षो मे भूयादिति इच्छा
मोक्षो मे भूयात् इति इच्छा
एतत् साधनचतुष्टयम्
एतत् साधनचतुष्टयम्
ततः तत्त्वविवेकस्य अधिकारिणः भवन्ति
ततः तत्त्वविवेकस्य अधिकारिणः भवन्ति
The last class we saw Titiksha, which is one among the Shamari Shatka Sampatti. All this sadhanam, sadhanani, sadhanam here it means qualification or the means. The means, the qualifications which an aspirant must have. Then only he becomes an adhikari. You can aspire, but you need to discover these qualifications in you, then you become an adhikari. That's why we spend so much time in the beginning, at least in the beginning of introduction to Vedanta, in the form of reading the text Tattva-bodha, should be familiar with these terms and their meaning. Later, these words will be used, taken for granted, when we study Upanishads, Gita and all. That is why we spend more time on each word, each topic. Each topic almost we spend one class, sometimes more than one class. The last class we saw Titiksha, Shitoshna Sukha Dukkari Sagishnatvam, which is important for the seeker of freedom, moksha. Now, the next one, very important, sampatti, the wealth, the real wealth is Shraddha. Shraddha Kidrishi. Kidrishi Shraddha. Shraddha is Strilinga Shabda. Akarantaha Strilinga Shabdaha. Shraddha. So that is why Kidrishi, Shraddha Kidrishi. We would have heard the word Shraddha. The word Shraddha is often heard, Shraddha, and understood as belief or faith. The word Shraddha is translated as belief or faith. If you really ask me the translation of the word Shraddha as belief or faith, whether it is correct, maybe faith may be correct to some extent, but not the belief. Even faith also, that word also is not the appropriate word, appropriate equivalent word for the word Shraddha. No word is equivalent for the word Shraddha. Shraddha is Shraddha only. You cannot translate that word into any other language. Because it is more than faith. It is more than faith. If faith is more than belief, and Shraddha, the word is more than faith. 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. Is it a faith? Is it a belief or is it a faith? It is maybe for a child. For a child learning arithmetic. For the child, it may be in the beginning. In the beginning, maybe a faith. Because you say, the teacher says, therefore the child has to accept it. Forceful acceptance. Sometimes could be forceful acceptance. That acceptance, that trust also is for the benefit of the person. But when you understand it as a fact, in the beginning, 2 plus 2 is equal to 4, maybe a belief or maybe a faith. But later, when you grow up, you understand it is a fact. What you believe or on what you add faith, now it becomes a fact. That is called Shraddha. So, trying to translate the word Shraddha. So, what will be the translation? Pending understanding. Pending understanding on my side, the seeker, is called Shraddha. I have Shraddha on what the Shastram says. I have Shraddha on what the teacher says. It is pending understanding, like the arithmetic 2 plus 2 equal to 4. In the beginning, it is a faith, but later I discovered it is a fact. In the beginning, the Shastram says, the teacher says, you are that. What you are looking all through your life is yourself. Jagat Karanam Brahma Tatutvam Asi. The creator of this Jagat, the one who created this Jagat, that Brahma, that Bhagavan, Ishvara, is yourself. That is what the Shastram and the teacher says. That is the teaching, that is the Tatparya of the Shastra. Is it a belief or is it a faith? In the beginning, it may be a faith. You may have to believe it, but later it becomes a fact. Therefore, it is more than these two words, Shraddha. When you understand, it becomes a fact. It becomes a truth, a satyam for you. So, that which I accept and later it becomes a fact. that which I accept, over which my understanding is pending, that understanding will be complete when the fact is known. That is called Shraddha. So Shraddha is pending understanding. This pending understanding is important when you approach the Shastram, when you approach the Guru. When this pending understanding is not there, you look upon everything with doubtful eyes. When there is a doubt, then knowledge cannot take place. You cannot approach anything with doubtful thinking. And that too, when it is a knowledge, then there should not be doubts in the beginning. Once you understand, doubts also will be resolved. Doubts will not be there. When we study in the school, in the college, do we look upon everything with doubt? When the teacher teaches, we accept. It is a fact, scientific fact. And the teacher asks you to verify it. It's verifiable. It is available for your scrutiny. You can scrutinize and verify the fact. Similarly, what the Shastram says is also verifiable. That is why we need to have the pending understanding in the beginning. The pending understanding is only in the beginning. When it becomes a fact, then it is no more a pending understanding, it is a truth. So, therefore, when you approach the Shastram for gaining knowledge, Shastra means Guru also, because there is no difference between the Shastram and the Guru. What the Guru teaches and what the Shastram teaches, between them, there is no difference. What the Shastram says is taught by the Guru also. Guru cannot have his own philosophy, his own idea. If a Guru has his own idea, own philosophy, then the Guru should be dismissed, not the Shastra. If the Guru adds something of its own, if it is not keeping it with the Shastram, then Guru has to be dismissed. The Shastram being the Pramanam, the only means of knowledge, and therefore the job of the Guru also is to unfold the Shastram without distorting the meaning, without distorting the Tatparyam, and unfold the Shastram as it is. That is the job of the Guru. How can the Guru know that? Because he would have studied from his Guru. How does that person know? He would have studied from his Guru. So that is why we have a Guru Parampara. Starting from Narayana or Dakshinamurti, there is a flow of teaching. The teaching is not distorted. The teaching cannot be improved upon by the successive teachers in the Sampradaya. It is handed over as it is. So, therefore, in the beginning, it is pending understanding. It is pending understanding on the words of the Guru. Later, it becomes a fact. So, therefore, that initial requirement, the initial requirement of pending understanding on the part of the student is called Shraddha. So, therefore, pending understanding would be the better translation. Not the belief, not the faith. You may have belief, you may have certain beliefs which may not stand reason, which may not stand logic. A belief need not be logical. A belief can be logical. A belief need not be logical. Because it is a belief. You believe. For a belief, there is no need to have a logic. It's a belief. If it is not logical, if it is illogical, how can you accept the illogical belief? If the belief is illogical, then it has to be dismissed because it is not going to help you. If the belief has certain logic, if it stands reason, then there is a certain benefit. There is a certain benefit having that particular belief. Therefore, any belief which is not logical, which stands against logic, it is ajnanam only. It is pure ignorance only. It has to be dismissed because it is not going to help you. Therefore, the belief, the words belief, the faith, all these words have certain understanding that it should be accepted as it is without asking question. Unquestionable faith, unquestionable belief. No, a belief is subject to question. A faith also subject to question. A faith also should be in keeping with logic, the reason. We say Vedas. Vedas are the revelations of Bhagavan. Vedas were revealed to rishis by Bhagavan. In accepting this statement, Vedas are the revelations of Ishvara. There is a certain faith, certain pending understanding involved. In the beginning, it is involved. If anyone tells you, God has sent me, if anyone tells you God has sent me to save you, this is a pending understanding, or this is a belief? This is a belief. This is a faith. You can have faith. There's nothing wrong. Because you believe that person, and the person says, Bhagavan has sent me to save you. You can have a belief. You can have belief. You can have faith. Many religions are basically committed to this kind of faith. That's why we call it as religious faith. It is the faith, that faith also, it is available for scrutiny. It should be available for reasoning. It should stand reason. Then no problem in accepting that. What we have is, we have more than faith, more than belief. Our Vedika dharma is more than that. And that is the reason. That is the reason why we say it is more than that. Because we can give some supporting arguments for our faith, for arguments for our beliefs. Please understand very clearly, it is only in supporting arguments. We can give certain supporting arguments for our beliefs. When we say Vedas were revealed by the Lord to the rishis, and Vedas talk about Papa, Punya, and so many other things, Swarga and all these are beliefs. Is it a blind belief? The belief without reason? No. We have supporting arguments for our beliefs. These arguments may not be proving arguments. You cannot prove the existence of Swarga Loka, heaven. The word Swarga translated as heaven, for us it is only a temporary place. A place you can go and be there for some time because of the punya palam, what you have earned. That is the capital, what you have. You have gained that punya. Because of punya palam, what is punyam? The invisible favorable result which which is in your account because of your good karma, that can be capitalized in Svargaloka. So you are going to a place with the capital called Punyam. As long as you have the capital with you in your account, you can enjoy. You can enjoy. You can enjoy different and pleasures, different pleasures which are far, far superior than the pleasures what you can enjoy with your sense organs in the world. It's more than that. You can enjoy, but how long? How long is the question? If I say that Swarga is permanent, then there's a problem. Because there is an enjoyment. The enjoyer, the enjoyed, and the enjoyment is there. The difference is there. So you are there as an enjoyer, and there are objects available for enjoyment in the Swarga Loka. Therefore, you enjoy. But how long you will enjoy? You will continue to enjoy forever. In the world also, there are objects what you enjoy. You are there as an enjoyer, and the objects are available for enjoyment. Here also you enjoy. Any enjoyment, any experience, it's going to be limited. There cannot be a continuous experience of sukham or continuous experience of dukkham. There cannot be continuous experience. Any experience is always going to be limited. As we experience in the world, the experience of pain and pleasure, they come and go. They are not permanent. They are limited and they are not permanent. They are anitya only. Experience of pain and pleasure, they are anitya. Thank God it is anitya. That is why when sukham comes, when we understand the importance and the value the sukham, because we know how the pain will be. Therefore, we are all after sukham, sukhanubhava. So when the pain comes, you know very well this pain also will go away and sukham will come. So it is a dvandva, pairs of opposites. One follows the other. That is why they are dvandva, pairs of opposites. Sukham alone will not be there. Dukkham alone will not be there. Sukham and dukkham, they come at the same time. They are not permanent. They come and go. They are agamapayinaha. Bhagavan Krishna says in the Gita, Matra sparashastu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkadaha agamapayinaha anityaha. They are agamapayina. They come and go. That is logical. Any experience, they come, and being limited, they go. The same thing should be applicable for the experience in Svargaloka also. So Svargaloka, it's a place, you go there, it's a place available for your reach, you go there, and there you enjoy sukham. When the Shastram says, then we need to understand that sukham is going to be limited, it is going to be anitya. There are words in the Shastram, in Kathopanishad, Svargalokaha amritatvam bhajante. People in Svargaloka, they enjoy amritatvam. The word amritatvam means immortality. Mr, the dhatu, mr means to die. Mrita means death. Amrita is no death, immortality. Swargalokaha amrutatvam bhajante. The people in Swargaloka, they enjoy amrutatvam, immortality. This is a statement in Kathopanishad, a beautiful Upanishad where there is a dialogue between the teacher Yamadharmaraja and the disciple Nachiketa. Nachiketa, he asked for a special ritual, doing which the person goes to Swargaloka. Swargaloka. So, there, this Upanishad says, Swargalokaha amrutatvam bhajante. Now, how are you going to interpret this line? People in Swargaloka, they enjoy immortality. Enjoy, how can it be? It is a contradictory statement. Swargaloka is, loka means lokyate anena iti lokaha. That which is available for your experience, for your perception, it's called loka. That which is available, like the sense objects of the world are available for your sense organs. Shabda, sparsha, rupa, rasa, gandha. They are lokaha. The whole jagat is nothing made of these five panchabhuta, and the panchabhuta are available for your perception in the form of shabda, sparsha, rupa, rasa, gandha to your five sense organs. So there is there is a perception, and therefore there is an interaction, and based on the interaction, the experience of sukham, dukkham, all these are possible. That is why it is called loka. Loka means the field of experience, the sphere of experience. So when we say Swarga Loka, that is a field, a place of experience. If it is a field of experience, Amritatvam Bhajante, they enjoy immortality. How can you say? Because experience cannot be an immortal experience. It cannot be a permanent experience. Any experience is going to be impermanent only, whether it is Sukham or Dukkham. So, this statement of the Upanishad, how do we understand? How do we interpret? Amritattvam, when we say, Amritattvam is not, it is not the Amritattvam in the sense of that being permanent. It is not Nityam. That Amritattvam is not Nityam. It is Apekshika Amritattvam. It is only a relative permanency. It is only a relative permanency, not absolute permanency. Like we say, we have such phrases in English. I've been waiting for you eternally. Suppose you ask a person to wait for you and you happen to be late. The person says, eternally waiting for you. It means eternally means what? It's a limited. Waited more than the time. That's why we say. That's why it is said eternally. It means long time. Long time. That is the meaning of the word eternal. The same way, Amritattvam is Apekshika Amritattvam. It is a relative permanency. Unless you apply your thinking, the reasoning, and interpret the statement of this Vakya of the Upanishad, it will lead to wrong conclusion. Then you may think Swargaloka is permanent. It is permanent. Having gone there, you will continue to stay there forever and continue to experience Sukham. Only Sukham. That is not the meaning of the Vakya. Because we apply our reason. If it is going to be the field of experience, it is going to be anitya. It is going to be impermanent. It is going to be limited. Because it is limited, therefore it is impermanent. Therefore, it is not Nitya Amritattvam, it is only a Apekshika Amritattvam. It is only a relative permanency. You can be there for a long time. You can be there in the Swargaloka maybe for a long time. 100 years in this world is a long time compared to the mosquito. Mosquito, your lifespan here is long. Compared to other beings, a human being supposed to live 120 years. That is this lifespan of a human being. That is a long compared to a mosquito. You are living eternally. Compared to you, a tortoise is eternal. A tortoise can live. It can live 200 years. So it is eternal compared to you because they have longevity more than you. And that, therefore, there is a gradation. You can see the gradation among the lifespan of beings in the world. So compared to one, other one is longer. Similarly, there is a gradation among the human beings and the devatas, and the people who live in the Swargaloka, and the people who live in the Pitraloka, and the people who lives in other loka. There is a gradation. There is a gradation in terms of time, what they spent in that particular loka, and also there is a gradation in terms of the experience what the people have in that loka. This is acceptable. There is no problem in that because there is a gradation. And in Taittiriya Upanishad beautifully presents this. Bhishasmadvatah pavate Bhishodeti suryah Bhishasmadagnischendrascha Chendrascha Mrityurdhavati panchama iti Taishanandasya me magumsta bhavati Yuvasya sat yuvatyayakaha Ashishto dridishto balishtaha Tasyeyam prithvi sarva vittasya purna syat Sayeko manusha anandaha Yeshatam manusha anandaha Sayeko manushya gandharvana manandaha Manusha ananda. That is the ananda, the happiness experienced by a person who is young, who is as God, who is balishta, who is strong, who is intelligent. The happiness experienced by a person, a human being in this loka, multiply that happiness by 100. Multiply that unit of time by 100. That will be the happiness. That will be the happiness experienced by the people who are in the Manushya Gandharva, by the Gandharvas. The Gandharvas, they experienced 100 times more than the happiness experienced by a person, a young person, an intelligent person in the world. And it keeps on showing the gradation. Sayeko deva gandharva namanandaha. The happiness experienced by the Manushya Gandharva is one unit. If you take it as one unit, 100 times will be the Deva Gandharva. Shrotriyasya chaka makhatasya te yeshatam Deva Gandharva namanandaha. Sayekaf pitranam chiraloka loka namanandaha. Shrotriyasya chaka mahatasya te yeshatam pitranam chiraloka loka namanandaha. So like the Upanishad keeps on saying, Manushya happiness is multiplied by 100 will be the Manushya Gandharva, and the 1 unit of Manushya Gandharva multiplied by 100 units of that. That will be for Deva Gandharva. Multiply that by 100. That will be for the Pitranam, Pitraloka. Multiply by 100. That will be the happiness gained by the Karma Devas. Multiply that by 100. That will be the happiness gained by the Devatas. It keeps on saying. So it shows there is a gradation. There is a gradation of happiness experienced in different lokas. So therefore, what is the limit? What is the limit for this sukham? Because there is a gradation there is a gradation. Therefore, there is no a limit. There is no limit, and therefore it cannot be permanent. In any loka, the people in any loka will always aspire for the sukham in other loka. So there is nothing called permanent swargam, permanent heaven, not there. It cannot be possible because there are gradations, which the Upanishad itself says. And what is the ultimate happiness, if you ask? Shrotriyasya chakamakhatasya. Upanishad repeats this again and again. The one who has listened to the Shastram, who is without any desire, who is with himself, who understands that himself to be that Jagat Karanam Brahma Aham Asmi, that person, the happiness gained by that person is ultimate. All these happiness are nothing compared to that happiness which a jnani enjoys. To show that, Upanishad shows the gradation of happiness experienced by the people in different loka. So therefore, Swarga Loka cannot be a permanent place. Similarly, hell also cannot be a permanent place. If heaven is not a permanent place, the same logic to be extended to hell also. It is a place for experiencing dukkham, pain. That is also based on what you earned, your capital. If your capital shows plus, then you will go to Swarga Loka. If it is minus, then you have to compensate. You have to experience. You have to experience the consequence. Because you have gained papam, you have to nullify that by experiencing, by going to the Naraka Loka, where you experience dukkham. So whether it is Swargam or dukkham, both are places of experience. Because it is a place of experience, therefore, being experienced, therefore it is going to be limited, therefore it is going to be anitya. So that's the logic. You can see the logic in believing the Swarga or Naraka. No problem. This is his supporting argument. Can you prove Swarga or Naraka if you ask? No. You cannot prove Swarga or Naraka. To prove Swarga or Naraka, one has to die. Because that is the place which a jiva goes after death only. How can be proved now? It is not available for the experience now. It is after death experience. For after death experience, one has to die because after death experience. If it is after death experience, then it could be the experience could be a sukham in Swargaloka or dukkham in Narakaloka based on the papa punya what you gained. This argument seems to be illogical. This argument seems to be logical. With this argument, I cannot prove it, but supporting the existence of Swarga or Naraka in the form of experience available for you, it is supported. The arguments can be supported by our reasoning. So therefore, all our arguments on proving the existence of papam or punyam, swarga, naraka, even the tatparyam, you are that is the tatparyam of the Shastra. All these are the arguments which are based on the Shastram. The reasoning which is based on the Shastram, the reasoning which is conducive to assimilate, to understand what the Vedas reveal. So these are not proving arguments, these are supporting arguments. That is why when we study Upanishad or Gita, you will find the argument between the Siddhanti and the Purva Pakshi. Purva Pakshi is opponent. He argues. He raises questions. He raises questions for every statement of the Siddhanti. Siddhanti is one who wants to prove the fact, who has a point to tell, who reveals the Tatparyam of the Shastram, the Siddhanti. For that, Purva Pakshi will raise an argument. And both the Siddhanti and the Purva Pakshi, they argue based on the Shastram only. Because Shastram is a Pramanam, the only Pramanam for revealing the Vastu, the truth. So based on that, based on the statements of the Shastram, they argue. That such type of argument is called Shruti Anukula Tarka. Tarka meaning reasoning, a logic, which is in keeping with the Shruti. Shruti Anukula Tarka. The Tarka, a reasoning or the argument, which is in keeping with what the Shastram says. So therefore, ours is not a blind belief or a blind faith. It is more than that. We give supporting reason, supporting logic to make you have the pending understanding. That is important for the reception of any new idea. If that is not there, whatever the Shastram says, the Guru says, in the beginning itself, you will dismiss it. If you dismiss it, who will be losing? Who will be losing? The intention of the Shastram is not to misguide you. The Shastram is looked upon as more than the love of 100 mothers put together. That much love a Shastram has towards you. How can the Shastram misguide you? Even though the Shastram cannot prove it, but it can be believed upon based on the logic, the supporting logic we give. A logic, when we say, it is not against illogic. Any illogical thing, if it is there in the Shastram, that can dismiss. If Shastram says fire is cold, fire cannot be cold. There is no cold fire. It is illogical. Even if Shastram says 100 times, you have the privilege to dismiss it. Therefore, we don't have illogical beliefs. Because an illogical belief implies the possibility of the believing of the non-existent thing. The non-existent thing you need to believe. Why should we believe a non-existent thing? If something is forced upon you to believe, which is non-existent, that is called a belief. That we don't have that belief. What we have is Shraddha. It is more than belief. It is more than belief. It is more than faith. So, by simple reasoning, by simple logic, we can easily dismiss the beliefs which are not logical. Even the beliefs of other darshana, other philosophies, other religions, if it doesn't stand the logic, then it can be dismissed. Because it is not going to help me. Dismissing is not to belittle. That is not the idea. Dismissing because it's not going to help me. So the reasoning which is conducive for me to assimilate what the Upanishads reveal, that is what we are interested, and that type of reasoning is called Shruti Anukula Tarka. Shruti Anukula Tarka. I can give some more examples. A jiva after death. To a jiva after death. What happens to it? A jiva leaves the body leaves the shariram. You don't see the jiva traveling because it is subtle. So jiva leaves the body. But does the jiva exist? Yes, you have to accept, because the person who was moving here was moving here and there. It's no more now. Only the body is. So we say the jiva left. The jiva left the body. So that itself shows jiva must be separate in the body. That's why you say jiva departed the body. When it is departed from the body, when you say, it means the jiva must be separate from the body. It is departed means the jiva now survives death. When it departs from the body, it means the jiva continues to be. It survives death. Jiva survives death may be a belief in the beginning. But we have supporting arguments. We have supporting arguments to prove that jiva continues to survive. How? There are so many instances we have heard. People remembering the past life, the past life connection. So many instances. Even recently also I heard some. And even I remember Pujya Swamiji telling an instance that in the US ashram, a person came. It may be I thought it's a famous person. That person had written a book also, I think. I don't remember the name of the person. That person, who was a black man in the previous life, he was burnt alive. And that person was born to an Indian couple in this life. I think the person is still alive. Born to an Indian couple in India, in Mangalore, somewhere in Mangalore. And the person vividly recalled how he was killed in his previous life under a tree by some people, and there was a church nearby. He recalled everything, and he went to US and he himself saw this. And he gave a talk. He gave a talk in the US ashram once, and the Pujya Swamiji was there. So he told us, the person recalling the past experience, past life experience, and he verified all that to be true. So such instances are there. So it means the jiva survives in the previous janma and now in the current janma. The same jiva continues. Therefore, there is no death for jiva. Because the person so vividly recalled the past life experience. Therefore, we have to accept jiva continues to survive. You cannot say no, because it is logical. The person recalls vividly. He has not seen, he has not come to US, but now he vividly recalled all the places, and he met the father of the church also, and he went to his previous life family. Amazing. So it shows that survives. There is no question of that jiva goes along with the body. You cannot throw the baby along with the bathwater. The jiva continues. This is one quoting an instance to prove that jiva survives. This is an argument quoting the instance, the real instances of some people. Their experience is real. Another reason also we can give, like we know the conservation of matter or energy cannot be destroyed. It reappears in another form. Nobody can destroy matter. Nobody can destroy energy. This science proves they're always in one form or the other. Matter and energy, they're always in one form or the other form. And they are convertible. Matter can be converted to energy, and energy can be converted to matter. They are convertible. But you cannot destroy even an ounce of matter. You cannot destroy even an ounce of energy. Now, our physical body is just made of matter and energy. Our physical body. We are not just physical body. We are conscious beings. We are conscious beings, and we are conscious of this body. We are conscious of this matter and energy. The matter and energy we are conscious of. Therefore, how can it be accepted that conscious being also go away when the body dies? When the matter and energy, when they itself cannot be subject to destruction, what to talk of the conscious being which experiences this matter energy? Matter and energy cannot be destroyed. They may change the form, they may change the one form to another. If that is so, how can the conscious being who has the experience of matter and energy, how can it be destroyed? So the conscious being continue to survive. The jiva continues to survive. These arguments are logical. So therefore, jiva survives. It's a belief or a faith, or it's a shraddha. It is shraddha. Because jiva survives, that is why we do shraddha karma, pitru karma. If jiva doesn't survive, then why should we do pitru karma? For whom you are doing pitru karma? Every year annual ceremony. It's done to whom? And also the jiva reincarnates. That is also shraddha only, because we have seen an instance, a person being born in some other place in the world and remembering the past life. That shows the jiva incarnates. The jiva continues to be. And the incarnation of jiva can be anywhere in the loka. It can be in this bhuloka immediately, or it could be in the Swarga loka. He incarnates in different lokas and experiences papam, punyam. The punyam and papam that also we need to accept, because the difference is what you perceive in the loka. There are differences, the differences of experiences of the people. One person is born in a rich family. One person is born with good qualities. One person in the beginning of life itself is highly spiritual, an elevated person. Whereas the other person is born in a very poor family. He suffers throughout his life. And he suffers even for a morsel of food. The person is not spiritual, he is barbaric. He has got all the negative qualities. He creates problem and trouble for the people around. Whereas other person is highly sattvic. Another person is highly tamasic. All these different combinations are there. How do you account for that? Everybody has come to the world, but have different qualities, have got different experiences, different parentage, different family, different nation. How are you going to account this? Unless you accept papam and punyam. The punyam makes you present at the right place at the right time. Whether it is punyam or papam. If it is punyam, you are going to enjoy the benefit, enjoy the punyam in the form of nice experience. If it is papam, that also makes you be placed at the right time and the right place and experience dukkham. So therefore, what makes you be present at the right place at the right time and experience the consequence of your karma palam in the form of punyam or papam? What is that? That your karma pala which makes you present. That is punyam, that is papam. So therefore, along with your karma pala, along with your karma, the palam of the karma, which is not visible, which is papam and punyam, that accounts for your experience of sukham or dukkham. That is why, since it cannot be seen, that is why they are called adrishtam, not seen, invisible. If you experience sukham, the cause for that sukham, the cause which placed you in that particular place, particular time, and make you experience sukham, that is not known to you. What made me to experience this Sukham, this pleasure, I don't know. Because you don't know, that is why it is called adrishtam. Punyam is adrishtam. Similarly, dukkham also. What made me feel this pain? I don't know. That is also adrishtam. Some karma, what you did before, it has fructified in the form of dukkha anubhava now, and you cannot know it. You don't know it. Therefore, you call it as adrishtam. So whether it is punyam or papam, it is adrishtam, not seen, not available for your perception. And how are you going to accept this? On what basis? The basis is only Shastram. Shastram says, therefore we accept papam punyam. And your experience also proves that. Therefore, there is a reason. There is a logical approach is there. For the difference in experience of Sukham and Papam, there must be a adrishtam. Adrishta punyam, adrishta papam. For that also, Shastram is a basis. For Jiva, for continuous survival of Jiva and the incarnation of Jiva, and the Jiva experiencing Sukham and Dukkham, for all this, experiences Sukham, Dukkham, based on the Punya and Papam, what it gained. For all this, Shastram is a basis. And there are arguments, supporting arguments in keeping with that. So therefore, it is not merely faith, it is Shraddha. So you need to have Shraddha in what the Shastram says. Because we have Shraddha, and also we look upon Shastram as the means of knowledge, therefore we completely surrender to Shastram. And it has come from the Lord. Bhagavan revealed that Shastram to the Rishis, and through Rishi Mukha, the Shastram has been coming over to the Parampara. So therefore, we have Shraddha in what the Shastram says. And the Vedas, as we know, divided into Karmakanda portion of the Veda and the Jnanakanda. The Karmakanda portion of the Veda talks about the various means, sadhanas to achieve the sadhya, different sadhyas, different means for different ends. Those means and ends, some means we may not know. There are many, it talks about many unknown means. Veda talks about unknown means. Veda need not talk about known means. Veda talks about unknown means for known ends or unknown ends. Like if a couple wants a child, they are childless, so they want a child. So Veda prescribes Putra Kameshti Yaga. Putra Kameshti Yaga is the ritual doing which the couple will be blessed with a progeny, a child. Now, this means, this sadhanam, how can we know? How can we know without Shastram? This is the unknown means. This is unknown means for us. If we don't have Shastram, it is unknown. With all our known, what are the known means? The known means is to solve the problem scientifically. Going to the doctor, taking tablets, whatever may be. But the Shastram prescribes by doing a Putra Kameshti Yaga, the couple will be blessed with a child. The Yaga is meant for getting the child. The means is revealed only by the Shastram. The unknown means and for the known end. Similarly, there are unknown means for the unknown ends. Like Swargaloka. Swargaloka is not known. But the Shastram says, we have Shraddha in what Shastra says, and the means are given by the Shastram in the Karmakanda, part of the Veda. Unknown means for unknown ends like Swarga. And Shastram also gives a lot of prayer. The ritual is a form of, a ritual also is a form of prayer. The prayer produces certain result. certain result, punyam. And the punyam fructifies in the form of giving you the expected result, karma palam. So Shastram is the pramanam. There is a famous yajna called Kariri Yajna. Kariri Yajna is a prayer for rain. Kariri Yajna is a prayer for rain. During that particular yajna, rain must come. It will come. That is why the Vaidika who do the ritual, they come with an umbrella when they do that yajna, because they know after the yajna, when they return home, rain will come. They have that much shraddha. What the means the Shastram reveal in the form of the yajna, during which the end must come, that you cannot verify by any other means, because Shastram is the pramanam, for the unknown means, for the known ends, or for the unknown ends, that you cannot verifiable with other pramanam. If it is verifiable, then Shastram ceases to be a pramanam. Therefore, Shastre pramana buddhi, need to have the pramana buddhi with regard to Shastra. That is called Shraddha. That is why the definition of the word Shraddha itself, Guru Vedanta Vakyeshu Vishwasaha Shraddha. We are not interested in Karmakanda portion of the Veda. Karmakanda deals with Dharma, Artha, Kama, Purushartha, which we are not interested. We are interested in Moksha Purushartha, for which the Vedanta is the Pramanam, that is the Upanishads. And the teaching of the Upanishad is Jagat Karanam Brahma Tat Tvam Asi. That is the Tatparyam of the Vedanta, the Upanishad. And that, in that Vakya, the statement of the Upanishad, which the Upanishads reveal, the same thing which the Guru teaches, on that statement, as a sadhaka, what we need to have to start with is Shraddha, pending understanding. And it will become a reality. It will become a reality when all our misconceptions, misunderstandings, all the pratibandha, the obstructions which come in our way of understanding, it is removed, then it becomes a fact, it becomes the truth. Till it becomes a reality for us, we need to have this pending understanding. Without pending understanding, without that attitude of pending understanding, you would not able to approach the Shastram with reverentially. The Shastram should be approached reverentially. Reverence is required. Only when reverence is there, only when you have reverence for the Shastram, reverence for the teacher, then only there can be communication. Then only the teaching is possible. When there is resistance, then the teaching will not enter the ear. Every word what you hear, over which you will have doubt. Over which you have doubt, either you dismiss the Shastram, or the words will not give you any palam in the form of understanding. Therefore, there needs to be a change of attitude, approach towards the Shastram. That is what the word Shraddha means. The word Shraddha means the pending understanding, at the same time having the reverential approach, the attitude towards the Shastram and towards the Guru. I give complete privilege. I give complete privilege to the Shastram as the means of giving the knowledge which I am ready to accept. I show my readiness to accept to start with, so that it becomes a fact later. Becomes a fact later, becomes verifiable for me later. That approach, that understanding, that is called Shraddha. So therefore, Shraddha Kidrishi Guru Vakyeshu Vedanta Vakyeshu. Guru Vedanta Vakyeshu, when we say Guru and Vedanta, the statements of Guru and Vedanta, they are not different. The Vakya of the Guru and the Vakyas of the Vedanta, they are one and the same. They cannot be different. Therefore, Guru Vakyeshu Vishwasaga Shraddha or Vedanta Vakyeshu Vishwasaga Shraddha. Instead of saying Guru Vakyeshu Vishwasaga Shraddha, here the author says Guru Vedanta Vakyeshu, showing that the statements of the Guru and the statements of the Vedanta are not different. They cannot be different. Therefore, having pending understanding the words of them is called Shraddha. It's called Shraddha. It is important for a student to have this attitude of Shraddha. Then only Shastram will have the freedom to reveal itself. Then only you can allow the Shastram to reveal itself. Allowing the Shastram to convey what it wants to convey by making yourself available for the Shastram, for the teaching, for the words to fall into your ears. That is called Shraddha, which is very important. Shraddha is important for Shravanam. For listening, Shraddha is important. If Shraddha is not there, hearing and listening cannot happen. Then the benefit cannot be experienced, cannot be gained. So therefore, Shraddha is important. We can talk more on Shraddha. Maybe the next class we will continue. We will talk on this Shraddha. You can stop here. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.
धन्यवाद गुरुजी।
धन्यवाद
धन्यवाद।